Nothing on that.
No answer?
No answer. Send a text.
One minute.
I'm breaking the quarantine. I'm getting out of the house. Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
She's in.
I'd like to call this monthly work session, April 6th, 2021, to order. First item on the agenda, Dr. Asplin, strategic plan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, board members. It's good to see you today, and we have a few items on the agenda today. Looking forward to it. The first one is our strategic plan update, and we have Corey Gordon, who is the CEO of Deliver Ed, the firm that we're using, and she is zooming in today, and I think she's on, correct, Jamal? Yes, so Corey, are you on?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Are you able to turn her up a little bit so we can hear her a little bit better? So good afternoon, and Corey, we really appreciate you being on today, and I know you're going to just talk to us about our strategic plan and the timeline and what to expect. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Superintendent. Is this okay? Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, you need me to speak up. Can you also see my screen, my slides?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Wonderful. Well, it's really nice to be there with you all virtually. I wish I could be there in person, but I'm hopeful that soon I will be able to do that. But it's great to be able to kick this work off formally. I've had the pleasure of working with Dr. Asplin and some of his team for the last couple of weeks to get the wheels rolling on this work. And I'm already just so excited to work with this team, to partner with this team to build a strategic plan that is going to change, hopefully change the outcomes of the district. So I'm going to share with you a few things today. The first is I want to help you understand kind of the overall approach to strategic planning that we'll be using together, talk a little bit about the timeline, and of course your role as board members in the planning work. I will pause at a few moments if you have questions, so just hold on to those, write them down. I know if you're like me, if you don't write them down, you'll forget them. But I will pause at a few key moments to field your questions, and then we'll talk about immediate next steps and where we're going from here. So Deliver Ed is the organization that I run, and we have the privilege of working with education leaders across the country, although in this slide I just highlight the partnerships we've had in this great state of Florida, and that is really thanks to word of mouth,
Excuse me,
as
Corey,
you know.
Corey?
Yes.
Corey, could you speak just a little bit slower, because it comes across a little harder, and we're all getting older, and some of us are, some of us aren't, but if you just spoke slower, we'd be able to hear you a little better.
Sure, no problem. So these are the districts that I've had the privilege of working with in Florida, but like I said, Deliver Ed has partnered with districts, states, and school leaders across the country to think about, as our name implies, how to deliver on results for students. And so I believe, Dr. Asplin, I'm trying to remember who referred you to me, but this is word of mouth at its finest. I've been able to kind of take a tour of Florida in the last several years doing this work, and therefore have really built our organization's understanding of the Florida context and sort of the opportunity to bring to bear what other districts are doing in Florida, to borrow, as we all like to do, new ideas, great ideas. And so I'm excited to add you all to this list. So what is exactly are those partnerships about? They range in terms of what the focus is, but a lot of them have been in the service of developing a strong strategic plan. And this is just a snapshot, a screenshot. I know you can't read it, but mostly just for the cute kiddos. A screenshot of some work we did in Highlands County on the left and then in Osceola on the right. And really our strategic planning approach is intended to be a joint ownership process. So it is not a consultant that comes in and writes the plan and hands you a pretty document at the end. We really want to build the district's ownership over the work. Our experience is that that's the only way that the plan actually becomes a reality. And so we will be working closely with Dr. Asplin, his team, and you all to ensure that there is real, meaningful ownership over this work so that when our partnership finishes, you all are set up to actually execute and implement what is in the strategic plan. And so I'm going to share briefly how we think about a focus on implementation, but I think that's really what differentiates our approach from perhaps some of the other organizations that support strategic planning is we really believe in a collaborative, facilitated process and a focus on progress monitoring and implementation versus just a pretty plan that sits on a shelf, which I imagine if I could see your faces, many of you have been part of processes that look more like that. So why do we think that way? Well, in education, our sort of theory of action as an organization is that there's lots of good ideas in education. And frankly, we know a lot about what matters the most for student achievement, things like the quality of the teacher in the classroom, the quality of instructional time, right? We know that those are the most critical pieces. But what ends up happening when we do strategic planning work or implementation work is we spend sort of 90% of our time brainstorming new ideas, trying to find that, one nugget that's going to solve all our problems. And we only reserve about 10% of our time then to really think through implementation. And I think, that's when we often see that it doesn't quite work out how we planned. We didn't reserve enough time to really get into the nitty gritty of how are we going to make this actually happen, especially across a district of, lots of different schools that need to be rowing in the same direction. So we sort of flip that idea on its head. We say, of course, the ideas matter, but let's go with what we know works, right? Effective professional learning communities, high quality coaching and feedback for educators on their practice, right? Let's make those things that we know work the focus of our work, and then spend more of our time thinking through implementation, creating buy-in, getting folks on board with these ideas, and then really thinking strategically about rollout at scale so that the ideas that are happening at the district actually end up translating into changed practice in classrooms across the district. That's when we believe you get to success. So what does that really look like? Well, we always are going to be encouraging the team to be thinking about sort of two characteristics. The boldness of your ideas, right? How creative are you being in your reform or your change ideas? And then the quality of your execution. And so we have all been, in a place where we don't really have many new ideas and we're not executing well, and we kind of live in the status quo. Just as dangerous, I would argue, perhaps more so, is when you have new ideas that you try to roll out, but you don't execute them very well. That's when you get up here in that controversy without impact quadrant. Not a fun place to be. We've probably all been there as leaders. What we really want to do is focus on that quality of execution piece to push to the right-hand side, right? Not all the ideas need to be particularly bold or new. Really, if we execute a lot of what we're already doing better, more consistently, we're already going to see improved outcomes. And if we include a few bold ideas with well-executed timelines and strategies, that's where we're going to see transformation. So we're always going to be pushing the team to think about successful delivery. What will it take to ensure teachers, school leaders, those who are at the front lines of this work are prepared to make the shifts and the changes that we're asking them to make that we know are critical for changing outcomes for students in Sarasota. But of course, we all know anytime you're trying to implement something new, there's a lot of energy and excitement at the beginning, but we call this the implementation dip. Over time, people started to feel like, oh, this is harder than we thought. And so we really work with you to set up systems to persist through that dip so that you can get back to a real sense of progress over time. And that's where this idea of what I'm going to share in just a minute called a stock take is going to really come into play, building the systems into the plan for actually monitoring the plan to keep it alive. So the problem here, though, is that I imagine we've got lots of really intelligent, educated folks around the table, including Dr. Asplund himself and his leadership team. But my guess is no one has a degree in implementation, right? Nobody actually goes to school to learn how to implement. I mean, I got a master's in public policy and I didn't take a single class on policy implementation. I took classes on policy design, measurement, but never on actual implementation. And so our organization has really created a methodology, tools, resources, and a framework to help build the capacity of education leaders to implement more effectively. And that's where this idea of delivery comes in. And so delivery at its core is about these sort of four deceptively, but maybe not as much as they seem, simple questions, right? What is it that we're trying to do? Getting really specific about those outcomes we're trying to achieve, measures of success. How are we planning to do it? What are our highest priority strategies to achieve those outcomes? At any given moment, how are we going to know whether we're on track? What are those systems for regularly reviewing progress and adjusting rather than just annual reviews to say, oh, we didn't make the mark this year, let's try again next year. And then if we're not on track, what are we going to do about it? How do we get ourselves back on track in a really focused way? And so we all as educators are familiar with these questions. These are the questions teachers ask themselves, frankly, every day in the classroom. But we're going to try to bring that same level of rigor and approach to the district level and the district work. So how we're going to do that is by building a plan that does
Hi, Corey, I don't know if you can hear me, but you're frozen on our end, and we're working on that. Oh, it's gone? I know, right?
She should be coming back on momentarily. Sorry, internet is not great today. I'm trying to connect. Okay, she's trying to reconnect right now. There she is.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Sorry about that. I'm having issues with my internet today of all days, so I apologize. Can you see my screen? Probably not anymore, huh?
Yes, we can see you, but not your,
What about my slides?
no, cannot see your slides.
Okay. Hold on, let me see if I can get it working again. Sorry about this, team. The joys of technology. Try one more time on my computer. Okay. I wonder, can I email my slides to you, Kathy? And you can go ahead and put them up on the screen that way?
Yes, I'll do that.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay. Sorry, plan B. Here we go. I'm sending them right now. And I'll keep going while you all are loading those. Although now that I'm thinking about it, that's not going to work because my internet isn't working on my computer. Superintendent, you have a copy of the slides. I don't know if you can grab your phone and real quickly forward that to Kathy.
Let's see.
Just forward them to me.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry. I can hear you.
Planning processes in the past, which I'm sure many of you have. there's often a tendency to say, well, we all own it. We're all working together, which is true. We want collaboration, but without sort of single points of accountability and ownership, it's easy for it to fall off people's radar screen because everybody is so busy. And then we think through the implementation piece, right? What we call the delivery chain, which is really the actors that are going to need to be involved in implementation, feedback loops, the data we're going to gather to understand whether implementation is going as planned, risks and planning for risks that of course are inherent in all of this work, and then thinking about the resources and support that are going to be required for implementation. And then finally, we think about setting a trajectory or setting a timeline for implementation. So those are the pieces that we're going to be working through with the team, as well as that sort of progress monitoring piece. Kathy, were you able to get the slides?
Pulling it up right now.
Yes, we're working on that right now.
Okay.
Dr. Asplin, why don't you email it to all of us? We could probably bring it all up on our phones
We'll do that.
or on the,
That'll work too.
or on the screen.
I even kicked my husband off the internet today so that this wouldn't happen, but apparently that didn't work. Just let me know when you've got it, and I'll just wait for your cue.
Okay, I just sent it to all of you.
I think I heard you say, Superintendent, you just sent it to folks.
I did. I just sent it to all of our board members here.
Okay, we are.
Great.
They are bringing.
So once you get it, if you want to open up to slide 11, that's where I am on slide 11, which is a matrix that has lots of triangles and stars on it, and I'll explain that in just a second. Awesome. Thank you so much. So, as I said at the beginning, if you open, and I can only see the first page. Did you launch the slideshow there? Yep, that slide. Perfect. So as you see here, this is showing you that our partnership doesn't end when we build the plan. We're then going to work with the team to set up a system of what we call delivery routines or progress monitoring systems. And this is an example of a district that has, as you can see along the left-hand side, a set of goals around teaching and learning, employee excellence, facilities, finance, governance, and community relations. And each month, the owner of that area, right? So remember I said, single points of accountability, the owner of that area and all of the folks who own the strategies within that area sit down with the superintendent for a really targeted, facilitated conversation about progress, where we look at the data, we identify some of the biggest areas of challenge and some of the bright spots, and figure out what we need to adjust about our strategy. And so the superintendent then is regularly getting updates on progress in those key areas that are part of his vision, right? His strategic plan. And the board then also receives regular updates. And this is, again, a sample calendar, but we will work with you all and the superintendent to determine a schedule and a calendar that works for all of you to ensure that he stays up to date on the work within each of the goals of the plan, as well as you all as board members have a chance to weigh in on the overall direction, which is really, of course, your role as the governing body of the district. And so that is a really key point of this process, is building in those systems for progress monitoring. And I've had the privilege of working with many superintendents, and most of them tell me that that's the most powerful part of this process, is the actual progress monitoring piece. It's different than what they've done before. It requires some real thinking and focus to get it right, but it can really be transformative in terms of how the district focuses on key metrics and talks about them regularly. If you go to the next slide, so that's sort of the outcome of what we are trying to do together. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that triangle on slide 12 that articulates kind of the vocabulary or terminology that we're going to be using. So we're going to start, like I said, with that aspiration and vision. What is it we're trying to do? Getting really clear about that. Then coming up with those SMART goals, right? Metrics, targets, year, deadline, and then thinking about strategies that support those goals, right? And so that's the work that we're going to be doing together. On slide 13, you'll see an example from an Osceola plan where they created a set of 5 goals, and you can see each of those goals has a set of no more than 4 strategies underneath it that are the prioritized work that the district believes needs to shift in order to move the needle in those areas. So of course, there's so much more happening in a district than what's reflected on this slide. And that's actually really important. We believe strongly that a strategic plan should not be what I call a kitchen sink or a fat plan. It needs to be really focused on those areas that are going to require sort of outsized attention from the district to get right. Things that are about shifting the way the district does business. And that's where we're going to focus our attention and our efforts. And then on slide 14, you'll see how each of those goals has a set of really key indicators, metrics that are measuring, again, prioritized, measuring success in each of those areas. So they had, for example, in that second goal, effectively manage talent. They were really struggling with teacher retention. And so they set a really clear goal around increasing their teacher retention and a target and a deadline for doing so. And then they really thought hard about what's preventing us from increasing that number, and therefore what do we need to prioritize in terms of strategies to achieve that goal. So that's a really high level.
Dr.
Go ahead.
Asplund, on this one, I'd like to point out that maximize academic success. They're not focusing so much on closing the gap as it is on making sure that no students are on level 2 or 1. And I think that's more important. We don't want to lower it. I mean, we want to make sure all of the students are succeeding, and I like that you've done that in this.
Yeah, thank you for raising that. I mean, I think that'll be one of the big questions. Some districts do end up with a goal that's specifically about, closing the gap or equity. Other districts don't, and it really depends on, and that's what we'll be starting to work on together in our working session in May is, what are those really key areas that this district needs to focus on? So every district ends up with a different set of goals. Similar, of course, because most districts are doing the same, relatively same thing, right? Educating students, recruiting teachers, engaging families, but the specifics of those and what metrics you prioritize might look different. So I want to pause there and ask, are there any other reflections or questions based on kind of this overview of the process?
When you're saying it's Shirley Brown, the chair, when you're saying you're going to have these separate goals, would it make sense for, each board member to have one area of these to work on, or to be a leader on? Or?
Right. That's a great question, and that's one of the things that we'll be working through in May is sort of how exactly we want to best use your expertise. Some districts do take that approach of kind of having a board liaison. Some end up using kind of the cadence of board working sessions to work across the goals. It really depends on what we determine is the best mode of engagement for you all, but that's definitely something we can consider.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great question. Anyone else?
Bridget?
Well, Corey, thank you so much, and I appreciate your ability to pivot with the technology issues. I think we've all experienced that recently. And I had some notes, but you answered a lot of them, and Mrs. Brown just mentioned that as far as, as we come to fruition through this, and I know that there's a number of steps as we move forward. and if this is going to if you're going to discuss this in an upcoming slide, but how is it that we come around some of these key points? And I'm glad that you had some, some highlights and themes, but then you identified the goals and metrics. And so if this is something you're going to talk about in an upcoming slide, then I will wait. But that's one of those outstanding questions I have, just how we develop that.
Sure. Yeah. Your question, just so I make sure I understand, is really about how do we arrive at which areas need to be prioritized? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yes. And then also how we determine what those metrics, and that could be very well the superintendent or a conversation with the board and then the superintendent. So just wanted to make sure that's addressed.
No, that's right. And I am going to get a little bit more into that in just a minute, but I'll just say that the first step in this process, and I'll walk through this on the timeline slide in just a minute, but the first step that we're actually really setting up right now and in the midst of working with two wonderful ladies, Carol Kay and Lisa, who are fantastic to coordinate this work. But really the first step is what we call a capacity review. So what we're doing right now is doing a really intensive review of where the district is right now. That includes looking through a lot of data. We included some questions in the climate survey that asked about the strategic planning process in terms of strengths and challenges and what staff believes should be the areas of focus. So we're going to be doing town hall, incorporating this into some of the town hall meetings that the superintendent is leading. And then my team will be running a series of focus groups with department, district staff, as well as school leaders, teachers, families, and students. And then you're going to be hearing, if you haven't already, from me to set up individual conversations with each of you. So we're doing a very intensive information gathering process right now. And what our team will do is gather all that information and then synthesize it and come back and say, here are the sort of top 3 strengths that we think the plan should build on. Here are the things we're hearing as areas of need. And therefore, this is what we want you to kind of use as your jumping off point for these conversations about what to prioritize. And that will be part of the role of the board in the May workshop. We'll share those results with you. And we'll ask you, okay, based on this, what do you believe are the most critical things we need to prioritize as a district? And we'll start to focus in on key metrics and collaborating with the district and what we're calling the steering committee, which is really mostly a cabinet plus a couple of school leaders. And so thinking about how we take this information that we've gathered and use it to help us identify those most critical areas and metrics to focus on in the plan.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other questions before I talk a little bit more about the timeline? Okay. If you go to slide 16, you'll see that's the slide with sort of the flags on the left. You'll see what I just spoke about. The capacity review is happening now in the month of April, which includes document and data review, focus groups, interviews with you all and other key stakeholders. We'll also do a leadership self-assessment, which is a very insightful facilitated workshop where we ask leadership to reflect on the district's strengths and kind of triangulate that with what we're hearing from the field. And then we'll share out results, and that'll be part of what you hear about in the May working session. Then we'll use that to build what I call the architecture. So that triangle we talked about earlier, the vision, mission, core values, goals and metrics, strategies, and then those accountable leaders. So we'll spend the month of May really thinking about trade-offs. How do we prioritize? And we have a system of tools and conversations, exercises to kind of help support that work. And then June and July will really be focused on, and this will be led mostly by that district steering committee as well as any other folks who are brought into this process, but the building of those implementation focus plans. So we call them strategy profiles, but they are just enough detail around each of the strategies, around what are the specific roles, who needs to be involved, what resources are required, what's an appropriate, ambitious, but realistic timeline for implementation, what metrics are we going to use at the strategy level, and then we gather feedback from folks to kind of refine and revise the plan. So importantly, the district staff is really owning this, but really engaging at key points, stakeholders to ensure that what we're building into this plan feels feasible and realistic to them. And then we'll support from sort of August to October. And again, this timeline, you know how it is, things shift, but this is the plan right now. We'll focus on implementing those progress monitoring routines. So what is that system going to look like? Building the capacity of the team through kind of an I do, we do, you do approach. So we'll lead the first stock take, if you will, then we'll work with the team to lead the second, and then we'll support them and give feedback as they lead the third one, and kind of really kick this work off from an implementation standpoint. If you go to, so thinking about your role, so on slide 18, it's the same timeline, but it shows some call outs about exactly how the board will be involved in the different phases. So during the capacity review, as I said, you all will be interviewed and you'll receive a report out on the results of that process. And then you'll play a strong role in particularly that first question of delivery. What are we trying to do, right? As sort of the governance entity, right? Your job is to set the direction and really help the superintendent and the team think about what it is we need to accomplish and what our goals should be. And then really, like I said, the implementation planning will mostly live with the district staff, although there will be points for feedback. And then finally, you all will be part of that accountability process and thinking about how the board has conversations about progress going forward. So let me pause again and ask if there are any questions or reflections on kind of the proposed timeline or the role of the board in that process.
I see none.
Okay, so then on thinking about next steps and the very last slide, slide 20, like I said, we're in the midst of this capacity review process and it is a great deal of work. So I'm grateful for the team has been totally on top of it. So I'm excited to really dig in and learn as much as I can, as quickly as I can about your district. My team is really excited about this. You'll be hearing from me about an interview. I'll get to know each of you and your priorities. And then we're bringing together the district strategic planning steering committee to kind of start to think about implications for the plan. And in May, we'll have a board workshop with you where we'll share the results and start to think about vision and mission and goals and metrics. And like I said, there'll be a series of exercises, sort of facilitation exercises to walk through to start having some of those tough conversations about prioritization, because that's the hardest part of all of this. There's so much to be done, and we really need to think about what that focus needs to be. So that, Superintendent, that's all I had, but I'm curious if you wanted to add anything else so that the board understands your commitment to this process.
Thank you, Corey. Really appreciate your time today and taking us through this timeline. Yes, the strategic plan is so very important to keep us all on task and moving forward in the same direction. And then I'm really happy about having the measurable goals on the backside. Really looking forward to that. So I think the board knows how I feel about the strategic plan. I think the community does too. It's very important. We need to move this forward and have it ready for August so that we're ready to go for next year. So again, I thank you.
Absolutely.
I thank you for your time, and I didn't know if anyone else had anything else they'd like to add.
Yes, Karen Rose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Gordon. Great presentation. Just a quick question we recently went through the district accreditation process, and a good deal of information was accessed from stakeholders. Do you have that to help you?
I do. I have a copy of the accreditation report. Yes, thank you for mentioning that. That's one of the documents that we're using to inform this first piece. So absolutely, we'll be using that as part of our review of where the district is and what needs to be focused on.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'd like to suggest that perhaps Kathy start a binder on this and print this out in the paper with the holes in it. And each meeting where we're adding to it, just bring it and we'll add it to our books. Is that, I think that would help us, bring our tabs and we'll just put it in the thing with the holes we don't all have to punch.
Keep it all together, sure.
Yeah, thank you.
And if I may add one other item, just so you know, we have 2 point people in our district who are going to be working with Corey and the Deliver Ed company to keep us all on track. One being Carol K. Brown, working with us to make sure we have our committees together and the timing and everything. And then also Lisa Damschroeder, who is in finance, to help us on the financial side of whatever it is that we create here with our strategic plan. I think those two folks are going to really help us out quite a bit. So those are our point people in case you need to make connection there. Also, I know that that this month we will have town hall meetings so that I can go to different regions and listen to the public and the community about any concerns, challenges, successes that we want to talk about. But part of that is we had Corey go ahead and send us a couple of questions that we can put out there during that time to get some reflection from the community at the same time. So then we can send that to her for the strategic purpose of the strategic plan, kind of like, I guess, knocking out two birds with one stone, sort of, so to speak. So we will take those 3 questions or 4 questions that she sends us, and we'll present those at the town hall meetings as well. So to see what the input might be from our.
And staff and the public can access those online also, I would assume?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Superintendent. Yeah, we're really trying to cast a wide net in terms of feedback. We think of course, the student, family, and teacher voice is really critical in this process. So with that, it's a great segue because I'm actually 3 minutes late for my meeting with Lisa and Carol Kay. So I'm going to jump over to them, but I really look forward to seeing you all again virtually in May, and I will call Comcast and let them know I need them to fix my internet by then. So thank you all so much. It's really a privilege to get to partner with Dr. Asplin and his team, and looking forward to continuing this work together in the coming months.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you very much, Corey.
Take care, everybody.
Okay, next on the agenda is the Equity Committee.
Yes, Dr. Moore is going to lead us through this portion. As you know, Dr. Moore is our new Director of Equity and Innovation, and we have a new Equity Committee that has met a couple of times, and I will say Dr. Moore has done an amazing job of researching material and leading that committee thus far. And so I wanted her to come in today and just give us an update as to where she is and where the committee is with our equity plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Asplin, Madam Chair, and esteemed board members. So great to be in front of you to get an opportunity. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Better.
All right. So again, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. This is such exciting work. I've got so many wonderful people that I'm working with. And so I just wanted to, I know that Dr. Asplin spoke a little bit when he talked about the committee last time about our purpose. And so just wanted to make sure you had that in hand, and I'll just kind of go over it very quickly. Our purpose, the purpose of the Equity Committee is to work collaboratively with the District Director of Innovation and Equity to address the equity issues and concerns within our school district, to express and speak for school community concerns related to equal and equitable educational opportunities, multicultural, gender fair education, and serve as liaison between parents, students, patrons, and the school district relative to equity issues and concerns. Our focus and goals, and of course they wrap right around the superintendent's goals and focus, as and this is so timely as we're working on the strategic plan to be, bringing this all together. But of course, closing the academic achievement gap and eliminating the academic disparity, identifying current community concerns regarding equity within the school district, assist in linking community educational support programs to the district, assist in achieving equity in the schools in terms of resources, professional development and learning, and cultural climate, assist the district with equity and diversity in staff recruitment and retention, and contribute to the planning and development of the equity policy and/or plan. Currently, the Equity Committee consists of current and former educators, community members, parents, students, and community organizations. There are 31 participants. Dr. Asplin and I make it 33, so it's a large group of folks. Of the 33 participants, 5 are students from Booker High School, Riverview High School, Pineview, and Sarasota High School, respectively. We've had many requests from other students and many requests from other people in the community, even within the district. However, we want to keep it manageable so that we can be active in what we're doing, and also to ensuring that we complete the tasks that are before us. And if we have too many great minds together, it gets difficult. So, but certainly what we have done is, in the event that we break out into other groups and to address certain tasks, we might be able to invite some of those people to support on some subcommittees or something of that nature. So we also, there are some students that are going to be coming off of the committee because they're seniors, and so some of those others will be allowed to come on, providing that we keep our same diversity, which is really good. We have we've met pretty much every area of diversity within our students. We meet once a month from 5:30 to 6:30, and so far we've had 2 very positive meetings. The first meeting on February 18th, we had introductions, meeting protocols, talked about our purpose, focus, and goals. Dr. Asplin and I reviewed data and of our district so that the committee members can have a picture of our data. March 24th was our second meeting where we began to work on the vision and mission as we move towards the development of our equity policy. And this is the part that we would work on to be able to share with Dr. Asplin and the team working on the strategic plan. So we're taking on that part. And of course, once the group gets together, the steering committee and all those who are involved, they can manage change. We know that it's subject to some changes and some additions and deletions, and so we're looking forward to that. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 14th, and it'll be a 2-hour meeting from 5:30 to 7:30 as we intend to really finalize that vision and mission and begin to work on the equity policy. So I'm drafting some materials together. I've been talking with many people in many different districts about what they're doing and how they're doing. And what's been interesting to me is the ones that I've seen that I feel are some of the best equity policies. All of them have spoken to each other, and as I read one, I see the others in there. So it's really funny that we're all on the same page, and that's really good and really positive. And so I'm looking forward to it. And there are some of the districts that have been extremely successful in what they're doing in terms of equity, diversity, and inclusion in their school districts. We've established a Office 365 connection for all of us, which allows us to work on documents simultaneously. So the committee, when we begin this work, whether it's vision and mission or on the equity policy, I place it in the Office 365, and so everyone has the ability to provide input, which gives us all an equal voice in really working on developing these documents for the committee. I've shared, of course, the Cobb and Kronapple book, Belonging Through Culture of Dignity, and with the committee, and a number of them have purchased the book. We had one of our committee members, Attorney Julie Wright-Halbert, who offered, and so did Ms. Cody. She came a little bit later, and so first come, first serve. And so Attorney Halbert purchased books for the students. I delivered all of the books to each of the students at their respective schools. And we're going to begin looking at a book study, particularly for the students, but any other committee members who want to be involved with us. And they're very excited about it. I really am excited to hear the students talking as they're digging into this work. I think it's so important that we develop this framework and understanding and language that I believe will help guide us and really mesh very, very well with where we're going with this strategic plan and following the vision of the superintendent. So very exciting work, and looking forward to our what next. Questions from any of you?
Tom?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Congratulations. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
And I have a couple of questions, actually, and maybe just one or two comments. But as you begin to go through the process, and I can imagine how much time it takes just to, and I made the notes here, to create a vision and a mission, to get that documented, to create the actual policy, and the strategic plan that's connected to what we're going to accomplish. After all of that, I think it's real important that we get measurable benchmarks, because as I looked here and in my own work through my NRI rowing program, it's hard to find those. It's hard to take these concepts and turn it into measurable results. And I appreciate your comment. I too am working through U.S. rowing in terms of trying to, and every single row club across the country asks the same exact questions, and we're all looking for exactly the same answers. So I thought that was an interesting cross-pollination. But I will be looking for measurable benchmarks to know how well your job is progressing, how well we're moving with the policy. So it's more of a comment, not so much as a question. So again, thank you.
Thank you. And of course, the work on the strategic plan is is really, we're kind of following that timeline. Our goal is to try to have as much of that to give to this team, to provide to that team, so that they're not like starting from scratch on that, but it's something that's already really put together and getting prepared, because all of that has to come before all of you, before anything is accepted and approved. But our goal is to try to have that in place so that it can be a part of that work in the strategic plan.
Bridget?
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Pleasure seeing you today. And
You as
I'm
well.
thrilled that you are in this position. And I know how passionate you are and your success and history at this district of really unifying and touching all groups to really with an academic focus. I know that this particular conversation and topic, as it's defined, has caused some questions or confusion or what have you. And I know that our focus here is certainly the academic success and achievement of all of our students. I know the superintendent has made that very clear. And so for the record, I just want to clear that part, because I think that had been questioned. And we live in a polarizing time, but I think this is an amazing opportunity to move our students forward with academic success and reach out across lines and build a stronger future forward. Two things that I wanted to highlight was, I know that we have a group of 33, which is amazing that we have that many people who are volunteering, such that we even have more, but I respect and completely agree that it needs to be manageable. My one question on that aspect is, in the event there are people who have any kind of feedback, and I think one of the goals, and tell me if I'm wrong, but one of the goals, and I think Dr. Asplund took time to really seek out a diverse group to really capture a proportionate alignment to what our current community reflects. And so, giving that management standpoint, is there a way that people who may not be on the committee right now but would want to share some feedback, do we have a mechanism for that right now?
Well, I receive emails and calls almost on a daily basis from interested people. They share information with me. They share ideas with me. There are some that want to engage in this type of work, either whether it's in their schools or in their organizations or wherever. And so I am open to, having those conversations with them and meeting with them and helping them to determine how this works best in their environments and with what they want to do. Certainly, we were always open to feedback, and I'm always available for people if they want to reach out to me.
And certainly I know that. So any way that can be shared so that it also be manageable, but different perspectives, and I know you always welcome that. And then and finally, one thing that we use the word accountability and transparency so much that sometimes they lose that luster of meaning. And I do fully agree with measurements and accountability and metrics. However, I was just reading something recently, and I know there's a big push on character education. And that's really hard sometimes to measure in an immediate way. It's almost that if you have these processes in place, that it is almost as such that it takes some time to actually see the impacts and effects. So I am eager to see how we can embed that into our strategic plan, but I do recognize that some of these things are really just from the ground up in the culture and the environment of our school district. And so I am, to Mr. Edwards, I am always big on trying to find ways so we can measure to see our success, but I also recognize that there are some things that may not be explicitly able to be measured, and really I just hope that we're honing in on just, again, reaching all of our students. So again, thank you so much for
Absolutely. And as we, I just was working with one of our organizations in the community about a grant, and I was just talking to Dr. Cantalupo about that, just really looking at, we have so many things to measure success in our district, particularly when it comes to academic success of our students. So there's nothing I have to make up for that. We have, the AP1, AP2 data. We have the other diagnostics. We have the assessments, benchmark assessments from the district. We have our FSA data, our coming up FCAT science data, our EOC data. And so we have some starting points. And I think that's what we have to do this year. Those are our starting points. I think the way we want to look at measuring our accomplishments with this position, and particularly our equity committee right now, is being able to accomplish those tasks that we've set up so far this year, which is making sure that we have involved people, that we're working on developing community resources for our schools, that we're ensuring that we are making sure that schools are providing equitable access for all students, that we're making sure from a district standpoint that all schools are being treated equitably, that the resources that they need based on the data of the students and the faculty at their schools is being met. And I think as we are moving through and looking at those things, those are some things we know that are tangible that we can look at and see if we're making a difference. Looking right now, one of the things that I am doing is meeting with all of the different departments at the district level and then out at the school sites with some very specific questions about how equity looks in their areas and departments, what's working, what's not working. Do they feel that there are any barriers that are preventing them from ensuring equity within their either departments, their organizations, or in their ability to provide culturally relevant information for students? How are marginalized students feeling in the classrooms? Are they being more active? Are they not? And I think part of the development of the framework from the Belonging book is what I love about it, is it doesn't address things that would cause people consternation. It is a book that deals with what I think is human, and that is a sense of belonging. You know, building an environment that is an inclusive environment that fosters a sense of belonging, in which the dignity of everyone is honored. And when we look at things from that perspective, it really kind of makes you sit back and say, you know what, we don't even have to talk about all of those other things when we just look at how are we treating each other. And then what are the metrics, and how do we use the data from our study to ensure that we are continuing that framework, that we're speaking the same language, and that we're not offending people in the process. And I think that's very important in moving forward in our work. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to say, Dr. Moore, that we appreciate your enthusiasm and your passion. And just a clarification with benchmarks for what you're pursuing would be embedded in and aligned to our district strategic plan to impact those ultimate goals.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Jane?
Well, of course, I love Harriet Moore, so we all know that for a long time, but I'm so glad to see you in this position because I think it's so necessary in this time that we're in. There are a lot of things going on in this country that we all turn the television on and see every day that break our hearts. But having just this year served as president of Florida School Board Association, I think the work that I have been doing in terms of equity, and the work that the National School Board Association has been doing in terms of equity has been profound. And I, too, have great hopes that you will do some of that work here because I think it's very needed. Looking at who's on the committee, particularly the students, we have 5 students, but none represented of the South County high schools.
Yeah,
that is of concern for me.
Yes, and we're going to be working on that and trying to get more of those students involved. The students wanted to be present, and some of them, transportation was an issue, so we're going to work on trying to eliminate those barriers. We do have kids some people that come in via Zoom. They Zoom in. And we are working on that. And unfortunately, it was kind of built and so we're working on that. I did look at that very carefully, and I said, wow, that's going to be a little bit of a problem. So we are putting things in place to ensure that. And if between now and the beginning of the school year, I can get some of those students on board, then I'm certainly going to be looking at making sure that happens.
Well, at first we were talking about not having any students on your committee, so I think having 5 or whatever is a good thing.
I can have so many more. They all want to get on.
I mean, should we have a separate committee for students?
Well, I
happen to think maybe we should.
At some point, it may grow into something different. Right now, I'd like to keep them a little close to me. I met with them prior to bringing them on board. Dr. Aspin and we had a fabulous meeting with those young people. They are brilliant. They are exciting. They are ready to go to work. You should see some of the emails they send me about talking about curriculum, and are we going to be talking about curriculum? And they have this dissertation about what they have been studying and putting. I mean, it's exciting for me. They keep me on my toes. The committee itself, with all of the community members, the organizations, the parents, and people from so many different ethnic groups and just different perspectives. Just to hear everyone participating and adding their input has just been really tremendously remarkable for our group. And I think that we're going to do some great things. And for the record, because all of you know that this is home for me. And so the reason I'm so passionate about it is because I believe it. I'm excited about the superintendent's vision for the transformation of our district, starting with that strategic plan, and putting this position in place tells me the seriousness about where he wants to take our district, and we're certainly ready. I think the zeitgeist is right. The timing is perfect. And I believe that with all of us, the board members, the families, the community, the principals, the administrators throughout this district, I know with all of the incredible resources and strengths that we have, that we will be able to do exactly what we want to in terms of our goals. I believe we will meet and exceed our goals.
Thank you. Tom?
Yes, just one last thing, and from a benchmark standpoint, it's real. I understand that we all have the academics that we can rely on, and I just want to throw back to you some of your thoughts. I don't want to get ahead of your mission and your vision and your strategic plan, so that's why I'm trying to stay back from that, because I know you've when I met you, you said this was your job, and it is. So I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for the school district for that very reason. But here's just some of the questions, and I know that we will have that input when we apply a lot of thought to the strategic plan. But just so the question is, how will we know we have a more equitable district? Mm-hmm. How will we know we have created more equitable access? How will we know that dignity is being honored? How will we know all of those things? And that's the question. And you have that frontier in front of you, and it is a frontier, mm-hmm. because those are the questions, and we don't all have the answers yet. But that's what I think we can, with your work and all of us together, we can guide the community and help answer those questions.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
I have a couple questions. Do you get reports from the schools when complaints are filed or incidents are filed at schools of?
I get calls from schools about all kinds of things, but not specific. I mean, if there are equity issues, equity, diversity issues, I may get a call for a question. Sometimes they may just be discipline issues, and I don't necessarily get involved in that unless it's something that then balloons into something that becomes an issue of equity or diversity. For example, if there's something that starts reaching out into the community, that starts blooming into things that can, land us in, on the front page or something like that, that I need to kind of get in and work with the team to see what's going on and have an understanding so that we can kind of come together and do the work to resolve that situation and make sure that I'm supporting those schools and whatever those issues are. But if it comes up, they'll call and ask the question so we can direct people where they need to go, whether it's an equity issue or maybe it's a discipline issue.
Yeah, I mean, because the students were here and they were telling us that there were several incidences of prejudice or whatever happening in their schools, and I'd like to have a benchmark. Well, they're happening, but yes, now those incidences are reduced, or there's
I think if those things that you're talking about occurred, I'm not sure that I was on board. I think I had been hired, but I don't think I had started. I heard some little things, but I'm not really familiar with what exactly happened. It wasn't brought to me.
Because I'm not sure there's anybody keeping track of all of that, or if they're even bothering to report it to the office. I don't know. If nothing happens about it, they just don't feel it's worth reporting. Do any or all of the schools have equity committees among them? So I know Riverview has something about the Embracing Our Differences. I'm not sure what they call it.
I think that as we continue this work, am I meeting with the schools, which is exactly what I'm doing right now, is to encourage them. You know, all the schools have administrative support teams where they actually come together with their teams or their instructional leadership teams, or their school-wide instructional leadership teams, and they all come together in different ways to address those different issues on the campuses. Do they have specific equity teams? I don't know that yet, but they may be. I met with a school the other day that's working on their equity plan. And invited me to talk with them about how they wanted to move forward. So I would say at least one school is certainly on point with developing that. So perhaps in our work, we can see other schools that would be encouraged to do something like that, to develop an equity team. I don't think that's a bad idea. I think it's a great idea.
We've got one more person wanting to talk to you. Thank you.
Okay.
Bridget?
Yes, thank you. And one other, actually, I highlight this, and Mrs. Brown mentioned something. So, you know, as you go forward, you know, I believe from a culture standpoint, it's twofold. There's the board at the oversight level sets that tone, and we have our policy. But really, for it to be, ironically, at the former presentation was really, it's all about the implementation and that buy-in. And so it really has to be from that grassroots aspect. So as you, and one of the items and goals here is to contribute to the planning and development of the equity policy and plan. And so, tell me if I'm wrong. So is that something that you're just doing an informational gathering aspect, and there are some elements as you get a sense of, and I think Mrs. Brown brought up a good point of collecting information to get a better sense of, you know, something that may not be on your radar, but you have this ability to bring the different perspectives from the committee and provide a cohesive plan, because the uniformity of expectations, I think, of our district from a cultural standpoint and respecting alls and everything that you mentioned that book really addresses as well. Mm-hmm. Is that something that would be presented to us after some fact-finding? Or
after we gather all of the information? I mean, it's a timely thing, and I certainly have to sit down with Dr. Asplund, who we try to connect weekly so I can let him know what's going on and what I'm learning. I want to summarize everything that I'm learning. If there are some similar themes that are running throughout our district and in our departments, to make him aware of those things. And at some point, if he, decides that he wants to share or me share, then, certainly we would do that. I would be open to doing
Perfect.
that.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And we are right on schedule. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr.
Thank you,
Moore.
everyone.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Moore. I really appreciate all that information. The next item is property insurance program / benefits discussion with Jody Dumas and Lynn Peterson. And I think Lynn's going to be the one who presents today. I do want to just quickly apologize to Lynn and apologize to all of you for the amount of information that she will give you, and it is confusing. And I know that you received this information late, and we actually had it on the board packet, and at the agenda reviews decided, hold on a second, we need to do a workshop on this and explain all of this before we put it on the board packet. And so we did that. That didn't give Lynn very much time to create this presentation. So, but I know she did a really good job on it. All of this information needs to be approved by May 1st. So I know you're on a deadline on that side as well. So, so with that, I just wanted to apologize to you on that. I should have done a better job of putting all this together and getting it to you sooner, a lot sooner. And but I know that she will give you a great presentation today and explain it all to us. So, thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Dr. Asplund. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members. So just to keep you on your toes, I put the PowerPoint with the benefit information first. So we'll do the property last, and we'll talk about it. Just a heads up, kind of give you information on what's coming for the district with some new benefit changes and things that we're going to ask our employees to do, and we haven't done in 9 years. So first off, I want to give you a little history. I don't know if you have a copy of my PowerPoint on the first page. I don't. Oh, there we go. So we implemented, in 2012, we implemented an electronic benefit system, but in 2014, we entered into a contract with PlanSource, and that is our current electronic benefit system. Benefit system has worked very well for us until just a couple years ago when they changed their platform from 2.0 to 3.0. And so with that, I requested that we get to, my team and myself get to test the new platform before they move us over. And we did that, and we found a lot of issues that we felt weren't going to work properly for us. And, I didn't want to have employees with benefit problems. I asked them, after they couldn't fix a lot of them, if there could be a delay. So can we wait? And they agreed. They had other clients who also needed the delay. So we delayed that. And of course, I loved 2.0, so I didn't want to come off it. It was like kicking and screaming. Not really screaming. But I love 2.0. 3.0 was a little to get used to, and it has a lot of issues. So finally this fall, during our open enrollment, they told us that, or just prior to that, they told us, no, we have to move you over. And again, I asked them, can you just wait till after open enrollment? Let me get through that and then move us over. So they moved us over. Well, we had looked at benefit systems back 2 years ago, and I decided, you know what, that's a huge move. We're still on 2.0. We're okay. We'll just wait. They'll be able to fix our issues. But now, with getting into 3.0 and all of the issues that I see, they've multiplied, and we're not getting the responsiveness from their development team, their management team that we need. So we did an RFI with Aon, and I believe Jeff Jenks is on the line. He is our broker consultant. He assisted me with putting an RFI out. So as I move to the next slide, I've gone over some of the issues. Specifically, we have grown in the way that we handle benefits. We now have a dependent eligibility. We pen dependents until we get the verification that they should be on the plan. That's a birth certificate, maybe a spouse is a marriage certificate. So with that, we needed that in the system. We have a makeshift dependent eligibility system currently. We're using the EOI, which is the eligibility of insurability, which is for life insurance. So we were able to get Plan Source to pen dependents using that sort of system, but it's a lot of confusion for my staff, and they're not that they're confused, it just takes time to weed through all of that. It's not a true dependent eligibility system. We don't have a way of uploading documents. We currently upload this to ESD, which is where we want it to be, the system of record, but we want convenience for the employee. So we want them to be able to upload documents there, and we can grab them from there. Our payroll system's a manual. We cannot get a payroll file from them that's accurate. So my staff sometimes has to spend all day just sifting through data and to find out which is the right benefit. And they're so good, they get it right. But it does take some time. So we really need a better partner to be able to get some better payroll files. Our voluntary life, we need an electronic feed. We can't be spending the time sending to the employees paper for them to complete. We want them to go online right there from the benefit system, complete it, and have an electronic feed back and forth. And these are all very important things that save time for the administration. I'm very tight with my staff. They're very busy, and so the more time they spend doing things, the less time they get to spend with employees and that sort of thing. So we want them to be able to be the most efficient they can be. I don't know that I need to go. There's quite a few lists here that I have problems with that we need for a new benefit system. And another big thing is the communication with the employees, the new systems that are out there. They're so intricate that you could just pick, this person didn't finish their benefits. We need to email, maybe we need to email all of them so we can pull all those people. So there's better communication through the systems that are the new systems that are out there. So that kind of leads me over to the next slide, which the desired capabilities. They're all what I just said, the issues we're having, they're all the desired capabilities that we really want to have. In addition to that, we would like to have a wellness platform. We've looked at wellness platforms. They're pricey, and we don't want to use our minimal wellness dollars for that, so we've put that off because they're significant dollars. So that's something else that we looked at to see, can we get that with the benefit system? Can we have it work together to give us some sort of wellness platform? And just a better account team and more responsiveness, single sign-on, and just all the things that we list here. And the most important, which I put at the top, is just the employee experience, the user-friendly. Has to be exceptionally easy for the employee to use and find information. So that's an outline of what we were looking for. And so we did an RFI, and we had respondents come from Alight, Benefit Focus, Business Solver, Plan Source, and Web Benefits. We did allow Plan Source to respond. Maybe they had some sort of idea or a better system that we didn't know about. This is just general information. The next page shows all of the different companies and just the different, the amount of clients they have, school-based clients, where they're located, years that they've been in business. So that's just the general information on all of the companies. And then, and this is all leading up to all of the changes that are going to occur. The risk management team, I had my whole team demo all of these companies, and we spent many hours demoing their sites. And we were able to narrow it to 2, and Business Solver and Benefit Focus were the 2 that we brought back for a 3rd demo. And we were able to ask them some more detailed questions to get information for what we were looking for. And after going through that 3rd demo, it was a unanimous vote that we felt that Business Solver was the company that was going to solve a lot of our problems. We understand you're always going to have a problem, but we think that just from their presentations to us and their helpfulness, and just they got us. They had everything prepared, and then their system is amazing, and it is going to be a really good experience for the employees. One of the highlights, they're going to be able to give us a wellness subpage, and not one other company is going to would be able to do that. So we'll be able to actually upload specific wellness data, such as their mostly participation right now, like their participation in any of the wellness activities that we have. And moving forward, we'll be able to build on that. We'll be able to upload that specifically for each employee. The Business Solver has a virtual assistant which speaks 20 languages, and it learns as it goes. It's amazing. So you can also program it. So if we find we're getting the same question, we already know a lot of the questions that we get, we can pre-program it, and they can do a virtual chat with Sophia and just get the answers they need, which will help my staff with fielding calls or emails on people who maybe get stuck or have just a basic question that Sophia can help. So we're going to, so we like that. So it comes down to, now, how do we fund? They're expensive. So Business Solver is expensive. They're twice as much. The next page shows Benefit Focus, but Benefit Focuses can do what we need, but they can't do everything we need. I think that Business Solver is really going to be able to take us to that next level. And one of the big things that I saw when I interviewed the Benefit Focus, that their quote there didn't even include the setup. It was more of a manual system where you are in charge. You get only 6 hours of their technology assistance to set up your whole system. So that's significant. There's going to be a lot of extra money with the amount of help we're going to need. There's no way I could spend one day and set up a benefit system. So So that is the price now. The next slide shows, okay, how do we fund it? Right now, the system is currently funded 100% through our voluntary products with AFLAC. And just for your information, it's currently $2 per employee per month. If you look at the previous slide, Benefit Focus was $2.25 and Business Solvers $4.68. We have actually expanded the request for funding for the system. We have reached out to all of our partners, Florida Blue, Delta Dental, Humana. We currently have our life and long-term disability out for an RFP, and we've included technology credits within the RFP, and then the voluntary products. And we are very confident that this system with Business Solver will be funded fully by what we have, the information we've gotten back so far. I've gotten some numbers, and we've ran some numbers. I'm not ready to reveal those numbers because we haven't had it out 100% solidified. So, but I know that we're working hard with negotiations with everyone, including Business Solver. We are negotiating with them to get them to come down on their price. So I am confident that I think we're going to get there. We're going to have them come down, and we're going to get the additional dollars from all of the carriers that work with us. Any questions? So any questions on that presentation with the benefit system?
Bridget, did I leave you up here from before, or are you asking a question?
No, it's from before, but I'll take it. Unless someone was before me, honestly, if there was anyone else on the queue. No, my question was more around the funding model. I completely understand. I mean, the way you put this out at the beginning, there are some elements that are, I believe, put us at risk, and also from an efficiency standpoint, but we have to evaluate everything from a cost benefit standpoint. And so the funding model, so I look forward to seeing that kind of structured out to see how that actually would, because I understand it, but I'm a visual learner, so seeing how that would encompass itself. But I also will tell you from a user experience, on the plan source side, I do understand some of the elements that you've mentioned. So I'm glad that you have looked into some different options.
I can tell you that each one of the, I don't know if my PowerPoint can come back up. So each carrier, we've gotten some dollar figures that they have committed to. We're still working on getting a final dollar figure to be reoccurring, so annually. So it will be reoccurring, that's the request, every year.
And what is the time frame for something like this and the overhaul?
So implementation, so after this meeting, we will go into, and after our negotiations, if we get there, we'll go into the contract and get the contract to you probably by beginning of May. Implementation will be started very soon after this meeting. And it will take until go live will be September 1st. So my staff and myself have enough time to really get within the system and learn it as the new hires, some of the new hires are coming on, working through that, but before we go into open enrollment.
And if I may follow up really quickly, something you mentioned was payroll, and now this is on the benefit side of actually pulling the benefit calculation. The only question I have in this, maybe Jody or Mitzi, or I know you all talk. So, is that anything that would it integrate with if there was any change in a system that the district's doing from the payroll standpoint? Because I know that that's also a discussion.
So I actually upload the payroll. So we pull it down and we put it in the format that ESD allows for an upload for a CSV file, and we just upload the file.
Okay. So it
goes right into the ESD system for payroll.
Okay. Jody's coming up.
I see. Jody.
I just don't want to do silos. I just want to make sure we're.
Thank you. And just a point of note, Lynn and I had a great conversation about, this during open enrollment, because we have not had an open enrollment that's been required in the past few years. There's a lot of outdated information for employees in our information system in terms of what their phone number, address. And so we're going to integrate all of that. So during open enrollment, we can make sure we got current address, make sure we got current phone numbers. So when we do things with safety and security, like roll out the new app, and it's tied to your cell phone, we've got a right cell phone number. So it'll be a great opportunity to pull some of that information at the same time.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Edwards?
So I do have two questions, but the first one is a comment. Can we have a central repository for contracts and when they renew? Because this is the second time, and I'm new, that we've had to bump up against trying to get done with a renewal. So, and even it's just a place that I think we could easily find a place to centralize contracts when they're due and give us a 90-day alarm. Because, and all of us as board members, I know I would, if I saw something 90 days, that gives me a chance to research all of you and ask questions ahead of time so that this kind of thing doesn't happen. So I just put that out as a comment. So here are my two questions. We have a delta of about 50%, double for between your two companies. And the first problem, that I see is that support from Benefit Focus. We don't know what that IT support is per hour after the 6 hours. Do we?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not right now because after going through it, the system wasn't going to allow for a wellness platform. They could not support that. So although Business Solver is 50%, and it will be less than that after our negotiations, I suspect, they are allowing for a wellness platform that we're going to utilize and be able to put data in. And we have looked at wellness platforms. They cost from $2 per employee per month to $10 per employee per month. So we feel that we're getting the 2 for 1, with the system. So we're able to get a wellness platform.
Okay, so forgive me, that isn't clear, but so if I knew what the cost of the wellness system...
That's on the page of the previous page. I put it up as a bullet under the prices. I put under the first bullet, wellness platform, wellness, they have been in the cost for these systems are $225.
Okay, so we're just splitting hairs here because my last question is the best one.
Okay.
I know you can't divulge it 100%, but can you tell us how close we're getting in that delta?
I can't.
The 468 per.
I cannot say anything. Yeah, we're not anywhere near a final.
Okay. Is it 30%, 50%? That's all I'm trying.
I'm not really sure right now.
Okay. All right. I thought I'd try.
Okay.
May I make a comment? The other important thing to note is that, at the end of the day, this will be a program funded not with any cost from the school district. And so at the end of the day, we have something we're driving towards, which is kind of the ultimate solution. But certainly if we can't negotiate and get there, then we will drop back and we will look at the next best solution. So, somebody had pointed out that we have conversations with Mitzi all the time, and absolutely she's a big part of these conversations. And so when Lynn started moving this direction, certainly that's the conversation we had with Mitzi about what does all this cost. And she said, great idea, just it can't cost us anything. So just so you know, that's the direction we're moving in.
It's a tough job for me. I'm looking at trying to get this fully funded, hence the reason we have pulled in other partners to see what they can provide.
Yeah, I know you always do. It's that's alarming when you see a 50% jump. So I was just trying to where can I grab onto the parachute here?
Absolutely,
okay.
It is my goal to have $0 coming out of the district's pocket. So, any other questions?
Thank you. I see no others on
Okay.
health.
So that is how we're funding that and getting onto the changes. So with that, a new benefit system, we have not had an active open enrollment since 2012. So, there's people that have not seen their benefits in all these years. That every year during open enrollment, we have less than 25% people participate. So with this, we felt is very important with a new benefit system that we drive people out to that system and get out there and take a look at their information, the benefits that have been uploaded to it, as well as at this point in time, we've not had an RFP out for voluntary benefits. Currently, AFLAC provides voluntary benefits with the accident, the critical illness, short-term disability, and whole life products. And we have not had any RFP go out. So we have an RFP out there right now, still waiting for those to come back. We feel we're going to see better pricing for our employees, as well as better benefits. Things have changed in the market for voluntary benefits. So we want to see that our products are staying up with the market. We also are including, I don't know if we'll implement it, but I'm looking at what's coming back for a legal benefit. So people who, there'll be more information coming out about that. We may add that, we may not, but that was included in the RFP. So we're going to require all employees to get out into the system. Certainly they've been in an electronic system when we first moved over. We had 95% participation back in 2012, so I suspect we'll get there. We're going to partner with Aon and their call center to assist my staff with the tremendous amount of calls that will come in, and they will be there for after hours and on weekends, so we'll be able to have that support for employees if they need assistance getting through the new system or if they just have benefit questions. So we're going to also work directly with our certain departments that have some technology challenges, food service, transportation, and facilities. We're going to work with those directors to get out to their sites and assist. Every year we do assist transportation with their staff who needs help with open enrollment, but we're going to be visiting them a little bit more, stay a little longer to be able to help them get through the system. We're also going to do Zoom workshops. We're going to do recorded workshops on how to do it and benefit information. So we're going to hit it from all areas. And then we're going to do, prior to open enrollment, we're going to do a communication campaign to really notify employees of the changes that are coming and what is expected of them. We're going to be mailing, we're going to be emailing, we're going to be doing pony to their site, their call centers, so that they get the communication and they understand. So that is all that is changing with benefits for this fall into the new year. Any other questions on the benefits before we move on to property?
Bridget.
I'm sorry. As it pertains, you mentioned the going out to RFP, and we haven't since 2012. I know we changed the policy and I know it's not required pursuant to statute, but as a best practice, I think our current policy says every 5 years, and I believe it's more on the property and casualty side. I may have to check that, because you brought up a really good point. Since 2012 to today, I mean, it's a competitive market, things have changed, different benefits. So is that something, I know there's a lot of time and effort, by the way, so I'm not diminishing that. When we do an RFP or an RFI of those sorts, it's a lot of work on that. But is that something, and I have to go back to the policy we amended, and again, I'm not sure if it's exclusively on the property and casualty side or if it's all along from the insurance brokerage.
Are you talking about the benefit side?
Well, but I was talking about the benefit side. I'm familiar with the P&C side of it, but I'm curious if maybe we need to make it across the board that we at least evaluate it every 5 years on a rolling, but just.
Well, that
But I don't know
enters into
benefits as well as
issues.
IWC, so you tell me.
Well, we haven't done, the last RFP we did for health was back in 2011. There was a lot of increases for that medical plan. We were fully insured at the time. And because of that, the board, the superintendent wanted to change some of the plan designs, which we had, in order to change any of the plan designs, we have to work with the union because our plan designs are in the bargaining agreement. So we can't change those unless we work with them. And we have a health insurance committee now, so we are doing things to potentially move forward with maybe down the road some sort of change. But if you send out an RFP for health, you could jeopardize changing your network. So you may not be with Florida Blue, so you don't always want to change your network. You may end up with Aetna. You may end up with another carrier, and that's a whole nother network. So we haven't had a lot of complaints or problems, and I've got no direction, and I'm not, in order to not have disruption to our employees, if you do an RFP, you could potentially disrupt your employees.
You raised very, very good points. And
so those networks haven't changed. Our Delta Dental has, again, same thing. You could change your network and have disruption there. And Humana is our vision benefit. We haven't done an RFP. They've been very cost effective, and we haven't had our increases have been minimal to almost nothing, so we haven't seen a reason. The voluntary benefits, the reason we're doing this is because to get better pricing, a lot of times they want an active open enrollment. So it's time. We don't require an active open enrollment every year. That's pretty significant to make people go out every single year if nothing is changing. We notify them that there are changes and we recommend that they go out, but typically it's passive. So with that, the voluntary carriers know that it's going to be active. They're going to give better pricing.
Got it.
Okay. And again, there's no changes in pricing, we really didn't go, and disruption, we didn't do anything previously.
Okay, you can move on to property.
Okay, great. So now, Jeff, I didn't need Jeff. Jeff was on the phone. He can leave.
I was ready.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right.
And now I have Chris Connolly of Arthur J. Gallagher. They're our broker for property. He is zoomed in, and he is on if need be, because it's dangerous to think I am the expert. They do this all day, every day with the property insurance. So he is here for any of the questions that maybe I'm not able to answer. So the background on that is I had conversations with our broker. They always ask, what's the budget look like? And I said, well, we're all being asked to cut 5%. So you need to try to not go up. Property insurance rarely goes down. So we need minimal increase. So that was the direction. I don't want to see more than 5% increase. So the property market is still challenging from 2017 and forward losses. So we are seeing continual increases in the marketplace. But this year, fortunately, we saw more capacity, which means more carriers are offering to write plans. They choose with their book of business how much they want to write in what areas. So, and not one carrier will write our program, the whole program. They're not going to take that risk themselves. So you probably have seen within this presentation that I gave you, there's a chart of all the different companies. We have like 18 different companies that take a little section of the risk that they want from our program. So So with this new capacity, last year, our program, we self-insured because the pricing, we had an increase in our values of our property because of just a little changes plus the construction, and we needed to get more with the market on the cost. So we had an increase in our total values as well as a property insurance increase in the marketplace. So last year we had a significant increase. So we took some self-insurance in the couple different levels. So the 25 million excess 50, and I think if we go to the next page, I don't have my PowerPoint up on the screen, but it's easier to see if you look at the recommended. Okay, thank you. So if you look at this chart, this is all the different carriers that take their pieces of the pie. And we have a cap, a policy limit of 125 million for over, a billion of property value. There's no way we can insure all our properties. And we've increased our coverage over the years, but this is the amount that we feel most comfortable, because anything excess that, we're probably talking FEMA dollars and assistance. So last year, I'm going to just flip to, this is actually how it looked last year, and you'll see the green sections. We self-insured those sections, and we were self-insuring at the 50 million level, excess 50 million, so 50 to 75 million. We were in that little chunk area. We had a policy for both those green areas for fire and tornado, but not for hurricane, wind, and flood. We were self-insuring that. So we had that policy because we were at that level where one of our properties is excess 50 million. So we felt we should, at least purchase that policy, and it wasn't a whole lot of money. So this year, and this is the renewal, this is what it would be. It would be 3.659 million if we renewed at the same, but we would have no insurance because there was this quote included no insurance, I believe. Chris, am I correct?
Yeah, so if you flip back to that other slide, Lynn, if you could.
Yep.
So the main difference is, as Lynn mentioned, the market conditions have improved from 2020 to 2021. So we looked at options to reduce your self-insurance because of the more favorable outcome of this year's renewal. So that the box in green that says Scottsdale, that would go from being self-insured this past year to being fully insured this the year after 7/1, the next fiscal year in 2021.
Right, so it's going to look like the slide that I currently have with the pink, and this one, we would be fully insured at the 50 million excess 75 million. So that's the recommendation, so that we improve our program and try to get back to being fully insured at some point in time. But this is, it's quite pricey for the district to purchase property insurance. So we can certainly purchase that property insurance to cover us fully, but we're looking at probably $450,000 additional dollars. So because I knew we were in a situation, I didn't want to have a fully insured program because that would have been a very significant increase. So if the board wants to spend the extra money, then and give me direction, we certainly can be taking ourselves out of that. But if we hit that area, we're probably in a Cat 4, Cat 5 hurricane, and it's demolishing multiple properties, and we're into FEMA dollars.
So Lynn, let me just ask, maybe you could talk a minute about how you guys work that every year in terms of the balance between self-insurance, buying additional insurance, and the cost of all that. How do you guys kind of work that every year? Because I think that's probably one of the questions of how do we achieve that balance and what's the right mix?
Well, I mean, honestly, for the past, Chris, I mean, you've been on our program for like 3 years, and before that, we were fully insured up to the $125 million. But we started seeing some significant increases. Last year was 17%. I mean, if we wanted to see a 29% increase, then we could fully insure our program. So it is looking at options to make it not such an increase, and we work through those models to say, okay, we can live with that. That increase, we can live with that. And we can live with that because we've been very, very fortunate over the years. I don't even want to talk about it. Told Dr. Asplin, don't even want to go there. If I put it out in the universe, I'm in trouble. So again, if we are, in a better situation this year, which I just thought we were not, and I know that we've gotten some CARES dollars to help us in other areas, but we can certainly be fully insured in our program.
The other piece of all this is, and part of that conversation, I think they do a very good job of what's that right balance, right? Every year to strike self-insurance versus the cost of buying insurance. I think one of the things you need to do, though, is look at your portfolio of assets, right? And so as you look at your buildings, where you see buildings that are built to current code, I feel a little better about self-insuring at some point because you've got buildings that'll withstand 180 whatever mile an hour. So I think it's always it's a balance. And so what you've done over the years through asset preservation and funding new schools certainly gets you a portfolio of buildings that I think gets you in a good spot that, where we do have to self-insure, at least we're self-insuring buildings that are meant to withstand hurricane force winds and things of that nature. So that's just an added piece to always consider every year.
Right. Most of our buildings are shelters, so they're built for those types of winds.
Bridget, do you have another question?
Yeah, sorry, this is my bailiwick, so I'm naturally going to be nerding out here. But and I think Jody mentioned this before, and I think is it Chris from?
It is Chris.
So, and I don't know if you sent this to me, but I understand that the property market is ugly. Last year was a tough renewal. Double digits are what we're seeing across the board. Mm-hmm. Jody hit on something I think is really important. Our asset preservation is key as we try to figure out what our comfort level is taking on that risk. So. But my assumption is, as we look at the layered and shared program, is we're modeling what the AAL, like what the likely probability is that we're puncturing that limit. Is that correct, Chris?
Right, okay. Right, exactly. So to give you some context, that the 125 million limit equates to about a 500-year storm, and then the 75 is a little over a 100-year event. So under this scenario here that's recommended, you'd be covering yourself for a 1 in 100 type of storm. But obviously, if there was a more significant event, like Lynn had said, Cat 3, Cat 4, then you may pierce into that the self-insurance layer there. But that's all built upon data and the model results that we produce each year.
Right, and I guess I kind of knew that question, but it was for anyone who wants to care, but to try to figure out how we do this. So I understand trying to offset the costs, and so feeling comfortable with where our current structures are and their ability to sustain a 500 or 100-year event. And we've seen, unfortunately, a lot more of those in the last year. So, but right. As you evaluated it that way, you guys feel comfortable with where we're at. And is that accurate?
Well, yes. I mean, we feel comfortable. I would feel comfortable fully insured.
I know Mitzi would too, but there's also a cost to that.
There's a cost. Mitzi's here. Yeah, another $500,000.
Yeah, to add into what Lynn had said, I mean, unfortunately, there have been some events, you think about, Michael, that happened in the Panhandle, where if you take almost Cat 5 direct hit, even if you bought 125 million a limit, you're still going to be far in excess of that, because your exposure is $1.8 billion of just physical assets you have across the district. So I think it's always a juggling act as far as you're trying to balance. You want to make sure that you're being prudent with the money you're spending. You don't want to buy $1.8 billion, of course, of insurance, but at the same time trying to cover that more likely event of maybe a Cat 2, Cat 3. So I think this structure gets you there. And what our thought process is over time is to try to chip away at the self-insurance So as the commercial property market becomes more competitive, prices come down, that it's a great opportunity, like we presented this year, to try to reduce some of that self-insurance.
Perfect, thank you. And I have to say this, and so you don't have to call me in again. I just want to give my hats off to Lynn Peterson. I know she handles a ton of things in the district, and I think she does a great job, but thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. We have no other questions?
Okay, so we're good with the recommendation, and that you'll see that on the next board, and then look for a contract for the benefit system. I anticipate being successful, and hopefully we can get that through, and you'll see that in May. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
All right, thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Jody. Appreciate it. Our next item is our CARES 2 funding, and that'll be Mitzi Corcoran.
You want a break? Now?
You want to take?
You want to take a break? That's fine.
That insurance stuff wore them out.
It's pretty complicated.
Madam Chair, you want to take a break?
Yeah, look, we have a 5-minute break. The legislative update, is that a time certain?
It is.
What time?
I don't know. Kathy, do you know what time?
4?
4 o'clock?
No, we might even get there earlier. So,
Yeah, let's give them a call and just let them know that Mitzi's probably going to do this in world-class speed.
But I'm going to speak slowly, I promise.
Yeah, she felt bad. She felt bad in her
Because she finished it up around like noon, that she sent it to me. Probably I'd seen that or sent it to you guys just in case.
Well, originally she was gonna send it, but then she was still working on it. And it was one of those things that I was like, I didn't want to receive it, you know. So I said, just share your screen and everything else, but just her internet decides to go out, or else it would have went smooth. Yeah. So. I wonder what they see. I gotta drop in again.
You wonder what you mean the audience out there sees?
I think for a while they were just seeing the Sarasota County logo. I just turned the camera on, which means it should be coming through here. It's recording. This is only people that can hear it should be the attendees, but there's no attendees because we didn't share that one. So.
It's not like a board meeting, right?
Correct. I think a handful, maybe in a dozen, 100 people. Some people in the community probably doesn't. I mean, but they mostly watch it through YouTube and everything else, or the app channel and stuff. You know, like she was like, I just watched it at home. You know, the one that was there. This is the one. So that's the screen. So that's the camera screen that they'll see. So I guess, yeah. I thought it was I guess not. So I guess we'll see what the next one that comes in. Because right now they were just seeing the. I can join in. Just be another box.
All right, I think we're ready to reconvene the workshop on April 6th. We're with Mitzi Corcoran in the Finance Committee. Chair.
Just me. So good afternoon. So there was a request to have a conversation regarding the CARES funding. So I thought, well, what we could do, I think there was a request actually for us to send a letter to DOE letting them know that we had spent all of our CARES 1. I did not do that because we actually received the what's called the RFA, the request for application for the CARES $2. So part of it we thought was the reasoning was we just wanted to make sure we were going to be able to access our CARES $2. And we actually got the request. So we have submitted that. There was DOE actually was very proactive in making it so that it wasn't as cumbersome of a process as CARES 1 was. Literally, you didn't even have to supply them with a budget. You just had to have an application and the assurances, and you could send in your application, which we have done. Unfortunately, we found out on Wednesday that they won't be able to release those dollars because they have been included in the General Appropriations Act on the House side. So House Bill 5001 includes, let me see if I can find it. Well, I know I have it here somewhere. Oh, here it is. There's, on line 115, there's an ABC where they're taking a specific portion of the funding and applying it and appropriating it for non-enrollment assistance, basically trying to find the lost children, academic acceleration, and technology assistance. And that totals about $814 million of the $2.8 billion. There's another $993 million for which school districts can apply, provide a detailed application of how they wish to spend the money, and then you can receive that appropriation. And then there's been a non-recurring $1 billion supplantation, basically that's what it was said, of the FEFP funds for basically the overfunding for not having the students there this year in the budget to basically repay themselves for the overfunding of the students. So that's out there on the House side for the budget for 21-22. That is not on the Senate side, but because it has been included, DOE will not be able to release the ESSER II funds down to districts. So, but this is still really early. There's not been any committees, conference. They've never come, they haven't come together. So it's still really early in the process. So, but I can tell you how we had originally planned to spend the dollars. So if we are able to get those dollars, I think the main things that we were going to do is ESSER 1, the district received $6.58 million in total. So we had the equitable services for our private schools, the indirect cost for administering the grant, charter school pass-through, and for us, 5 days of additional training for the 186, 196. And that spends it all. There's still about a little over $500,000 in funds for charter schools and for private schools that needs to be spent down. So how we had originally looked at was let's just kind of reimburse ourselves for what we've kind of already expended to date. So the cost of the 5 additional days of training is another $540,000 or so that we still, haven't been reimbursed. Cleaning, sanitation, air filters, PPE, after FEMA. So FEMA's cutoff date was September 15th, and we have filed that claim with FEMA. It's about $2.7 million. So that's how much we spent on PPE and sanitation prior to September 15th. So from September 15th, this was actually done in February, so it's not as current, but it's another $780,000. We have had COVID leave days, as you know. We approved leave days. First, there was the mandatory federal leave, and then we have the additional leave. That's running just under $2 million right now. Increased cost for electricity because we are pushing air through our schools at a much greater rate than we have in the past. So our electric bills are about $1.7 million more than they were last year. We've put water bottle filling stations in our schools, $150,000. We had to purchase curriculum for all of the virtual programming, $270,000. We purchased $1.6 million in laptop computers. Internets and hotspots were about $80,000. Some lost revenues that we thought we might be able to recoup: after school fees, $1.4 million. Food service indirect costs on the grant, $900,000. Facility rentals for the district share, $400,000. And then there is just the overall decline in losses from school food service, which is about $3.6 million over the last 2 years. So all told, that's $13.32 million. So if we take that, and we were due an ESSER 2 for $25.76 million. So if we subtract that out, and then now we start with our targeted programs and our interventions for our kids. We've already started during the duty day. If a teacher is willing to work during their planning period, we're compensating them for that lost time. And they're able to provide targeted tutoring to students. So we're doing that. We have plans for a very expanded summer program this year. I know we're doing it at multiple high schools, middle schools, and a large number of our elementary schools. We're expecting that to cost about $4 million. And then continuing on into the next school year with more interventions. So another $1 to $2 million. Ongoing custodial supplies and PPE, $4 million. So basically, that's it. There's that kind of spends it all the way down. Actually, it spends it expends it. But at this point, I just would like us to try to get reimbursed for what we spent and then start spending the money on our kids. So I guess the biggest concern for us right now is if the funds are going to be tied up until July 1st, half of our summer school program is already over. So it's hard to plan for a summer school program if you don't know if you're going to get reimbursed. I mean, we have to do this. We have to get our kids, in these small classes and targeted interventions one-on-one, and we all understand that. So we have to find the money. The hope is that it won't stay within the General Appropriations Act. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Jane?
Well, I think what I really asked was to send it to the legislators in our delegation, but basically, I think we all need to make sure that we can mention where we've spent money and where we're going to spend the future money, because it's not only going to be this legislature and this governor who will be asking us about that, but also the federal government is going to be most interested. And then will we get all that money? What will stay? What ramifications are there of us getting it? And there's some conjecture as to when, and as you said, and that sort of thing. So that was really my biggest concern was that. And then are these funds something that we can spend for any mental health issues that we have?
I think the use of the funds is very broad. There are 15 categories, and I can't imagine that mental health isn't also a targeted intervention for a student. So Tara is here. She's our expert on all things with the grant, and she's nodding yes, so yes.
And then, the other question that I had was, take, for example, the Dreamers Academy. They are going into their new school in the fall. So what are they entitled to in terms of CARES dollars?
We have asked that question of DOE and are still awaiting a response because the application is in March. So if they provide the funds now, the equitable share is based, and they did say it was based on the third survey, the February survey, Survey 3. February's counts. Of course, Dreamers Academy is not included in that because they were not open. So the funding is coming based upon the February survey.
Okay. That was a question that I had. So our other partners would be getting their share?
Absolutely.
Because I had a call about that from one of our charter schools last night.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are you saying because they weren't open last year, they're not getting any of the funding to make sure that their classes, when they open next year, are, with the safety measures in place? Some of the things that we've had to do with the extra cleaning and the...
We're waiting an answer from DOE on that because we know we have a charter school that's opening. I'm sure there are many others that have charter schools that are opening. If it's a private school, that's a separate application. So, but I know that based upon when the grant was released and when they calculated how much each district received, it was based upon the survey, the February counts, the students that were at your school district in February.
When we continue to look at our budget for next year, I would believe at our next workshop, is there any way that you could find out from the charter schools which of them applied for, is it the PPP funding, and received it?
Protection.
And because I think there was 2 chances, so that we could look at that too.
Yeah, I mean, I know that some of them received it in the first ESSER. I'm not sure about this one, but I know that a number of them did receive funds with the last one.
Yeah, because we do our sharing with our capital dollars, and I think it would be when we have that discussion. Any other questions?
No worries. Thank you.
As they're starting to really get down and debating the budgets up in Tallahassee, I'm sure you will be on pins and needles for the next month.
Oh, yes, as all finance officers in the state are right now. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next thing we have is the legislative update. Kathy, are they available yet? Oh, there they are.
Hello.
Hi, Megan.
Hi, Megan.
Thanks for having us. If you're ready to go, I can get started.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Tell us what new and exciting things are happening up there.
All right. Well, it is week 6 of a legislative session here in Tallahassee, of a 9-week legislative session. So we are kind of rounding the bend towards the end with it in sight. I'll give you all a short budget update just to kind of pick up where Mitzi left off. So the appropriations committees both met last week in the House and the Senate chambers, and they passed their respective budget bills out to the floor. The chambers will have floor sessions this week, actually tomorrow, to pass their budgets out of the chamber and tee those up for a budget conference. That puts them in the posture where they're able to go into conference and then negotiate the specific allocations between the chambers. And so I'm sure you've seen, the Senate's budget level funded kind of the BSA and sort of just did a continuation budget as far as last year, kind of where last year left off looking forward. The House, on the other hand, did do more of a comprehensive budget with some changes to the categoricals, and they did do a $52 per student BSA increase and some other changes. But we think we probably will see a lot of changes even from where these two chamber proposals are, where they currently stand, because the Revenue Estimating Conference is actually meeting today. I think they've been in an all-out marathon estimating session to come up with the state revenues for this next year, for the next outlook. So that'll really play a lot into how much money is available in state revenue, and then with the federal funding all kind of coming together, it'll give everyone a good picture of where we stand. Also, as far as the student count goes, the Senate's budget, both the House and Senate's current budgets assumed the 48,000 missing students, which was the current number that everyone was working off of. The Revenue Estimating Conference actually met last Thursday, and they adjusted that number down by 26,000 students. So they are down to about 22,000 missing students as of right now. So that'll certainly have a budget impact when it comes to the chambers putting their budgets together. And so we'll continue to watch and keep you all updated, but I anticipate there definitely being some changes on the horizon as far as the House and Senate budgets go. Something to note, very positive note as of where we are right now, both the House and the Senate budget for the first time in, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 years, both of them are going to allow the RLE to grow by the full value. And so that's something we haven't seen in quite some time, which is a really positive outcome out of Tallahassee, and something I think that we anticipate staying the same as far as the policy goes, no matter how the revenue estimate changes. Switching over to the policy side, I just wanted to touch on a bill that did pass out of the House chamber last week. The House took up the Senate's version of a civics education bill by Senator Brandes. They did amend it and send it back to the Senate, so it's not passed out of both chambers just yet, but it's been a topic that's been hotly discussed in Tallahassee. I think there may have been 5 or 6 different civics proposal bills at one point in time, and the governor did do a press conference recommending the legislature dedicate federal funds to a civics education initiative. And so the bill essentially requires the commissioner to develop the curriculum that would then become a part of the U.S. government high school course. It would be optional for districts to do, but as an incentive, the bill would would essentially require the DOE to recognize schools that complete the curriculum and meet certain thresholds or requirements as freedom schools. And so they would be able to kind of use that as a badge of honor as far as civics education goes. With that, I will turn it over to Ron to kind of follow up on policy updates.
Thanks, Megan, and good afternoon, everybody. There's a couple of other bills that I don't think we've touched on in the past that you've probably heard about, but we're starting to see some movement on them and starting to see the language coming to shape. So wanted to give you all a report on them. The first bill is certainly the Senate's attempt to revamp the Bright Futures Scholarship Program. As of today, there is no language about redoing the Bright Futures program on the House side, but the Senate, as I'm sure you've heard, has had a proposal moving its way through the process. Last week, they did do another series of amendments to the bill that I would consider, for those who support Bright Futures program as it is today, to be positive developments. First of all, they removed the linkage from having a Bright Future Scholarship Award to being enrolled in a degree program that somebody determines directly leads to a job. This issue would have prevented a lot of degrees not to qualify for Bright Futures, and was something that made some people definitely upset. So the Senate did remove that language. They also removed language that would have offset the hours covered by Bright Futures by whatever hours, college credit hours, that students entered a college or university with. So if the students had accelerated mechanisms and came with college credit, it would allow for the student to have the full 120 hours of Bright Futures, even if they came to college with the college credit, and also if they graduated or received their degree with a balance remaining of their Bright Futures awards. There was a provision in the bill that would not have allowed them to any longer provide use those extra hours or the balance for graduate courses, but that language was also removed from the bill. So effectively, the two things that the bill does now is that it requires a dashboard about wages and degree programs that students will need to go to a career guidance center if they have a Bright Futures award, and talk to the guidance counselor about what degrees they're interested in and the outlooks for employment and wages for those degrees. And also importantly, the bill still does remove the 100% tuition guarantee and 75% tuition guarantee that's currently in law for a academic scholar or a medallion, and makes the funding of Bright Futures Awards an annual budget decision. So there still is some controversy about that. There's a lot of supporters of Bright Futures that would like to see that tuition guarantee continue to be written into law, even though it still is funded annually. But with that, I do mention that both the House and the Senate budgets, even if they remove the 100% and 75%, still do fully fund Bright Futures in each of their proposed budgets. And the only funding issue is the House currently is proposing to remove the textbook stipend, which is $600 a year for academic scholars, in an effort to save $37 million in their initial budget proposal. But certainly, this and every other budget issue will be revisited once the new revenue estimates are made available. Another bill that has been moving a little bit in the Senate, but last week the House proposed a committee bill on it as well. So we're starting to see some interest on both sides. It's a higher ed bill, but it does have some district and student impact. So I wanted to put it on your radar screen. First of all, it would create liability immunity for any higher ed or post-secondary institution. So that would, we believe, include our technical centers. And the immunity is for any litigation related to refunds of tuition or fees that a student may claim during the COVID shutdown. This is certainly a big issue for the universities. You're seeing some of the large universities be faced with potential class actions for tuition and fees refunds by students who are saying they didn't get the education that they were promised when they paid their tuition. But this bill would create immunity for the post-secondary institution, whether it's a public or private. And certainly, like I said, it would include our school districts. Another interesting item that is more just for your knowledge, and that I believe that some of our students would certainly like if it was enacted, but it also creates a buy one, get one free BOGO course process, where if a student enrolls in a course in certain targeted degree areas, then the institution would be required to then give that student a free course in the same targeted career path. And so it's literally a BOGO when it comes to courses. So we'll keep our eye on that issue, on that bill, but just wanted to make you all aware of it. Another bill that we've been somewhat interacting with is a bill that started out called Materials Harmful to Minors. It had a couple of issues in it, both of which impact school districts. The first one would have required districts to go through all of the library and classroom materials and basically self-decide if anything was objectionable, and also remove any material that any person, whether it be a parent or just a member of the community, themselves decides was objectionable. That first language about the materials has been removed from the bill, and so now the existing law that basically says that school districts are responsible for materials in the library and the classroom, make sure that they're age appropriate and have instructional value, is how we will continue to govern our library and media materials. But there is somewhat of a fight going on when it comes to reproductive health still in the bill. The House changes their bill from the current opt-out for by a parent allowing a student to be instructed in reproductive health. And the Senate bill continues for the current process to be in effect, where a student would have to actually opt out rather than opt in, which is, what the House bill did. But the Senate version maintains the opt out, but it also requires the school board each year to adopt the reproductive health curriculum at a school board meeting, and also provide notice to every parent in the district about what the process would be to opt their student out of reproductive health. The bill was supposed to move today in the House Education Committee, but it was temporarily postponed. So there still is some controversy and apparently some work that's going to be done on that bill, but because it does involve potential items that would come up in front of the school board, we wanted to certainly put that on your radar screen at this point. And then the other final bill that I wanted to mention is the union bill, or dues bill. It has certainly been moving in both chambers. It was supposed to move in the Senate today, but I do not believe that it made it out of the Rules Committee, which they just completed. But effectively, what the bill does is it makes clear that any member of a collective bargaining organization, or also known as a union, can quit at any time. The union can't put up any roadblocks or require any reasons. It also makes clear that if the union member has a payroll deduction for their dues, they have to actually opt into that each time a new contract is negotiated, or every 3 years, whichever one occurs sooner. And then today on the Senate side, there was going to be a carve out in the bill for firefighters, correction officers, and police officer unions. But that bill, like I said, I don't believe made it out of the Senate Rules Committee, so it will be there for another week while they consider where it's going to go from here. So those were the items that we just wanted to mention to you, and certainly if we have any other items that you'd like to raise with us or any questions about these, we'd be glad to discuss them now.
This is Shirley Brown. I know they've put the $500 million in again, and that's not for another $500 million. That just funds the raises that it got last year. But I heard there's been some talk about $1,000 per teacher raised from the dollars. Have they dropped that, or are they still looking at that?
So the $1,000 teacher bonus is I would call it a supplemental funding issue that the governor himself has put forth above the 500 million teacher salary, fully funding that categorical. So that supplemental announcement was made really after both chambers had kind of put their budgets in order, if I recall the timing correctly. So we have not seen any actual movement on that other than the governor's announcement. But certainly that item is ripe to be raised in the budget conference once we have the new revenue estimates. And I believe that's where the governor intended the legislature to start to address that item. I mean, and he also the governor made a series of budget recommendations as this additional federal funding was solidified of what we were getting, not just in education, but across the board, and a number of other items, none of which were really picked up, certainly in the budget proposals, just because of timing. But we anticipate, kind of what Megan was saying, the budgets we have in front of us, even whether it's the education silo or any other ones, we expect them to look very different when we get into conference, more so than we've ever seen in the past, just because of the numbers that the current budgets are built on are not really in check with where the legislature is going to be once we have the additional federal funding and the revised state revenue estimates.
And I understand too that we originally didn't even bother with the summer learning academies because we were just thinking, well, the money's going to be stretched this year, and that's probably ridiculous to be even asking. But then I understand with the supplemental, there maybe be looking for pilot programs for helping to those children who may not be on level. So they may be looking back to us at that pilot project.
Yeah, and so it was kind of a twofold approach on the summer learning academies. The first one being is that certainly when we were looking at whether or not to seek state funding for district-specific projects like that, the revenues at the state level were very stretched. But we also anticipated receiving pretty substantial funds, or were expecting to receive some pretty substantial federal funds related to education. And frankly, in the second ESSER tranche that comes through, there's a large portion of it that is kind of cordoned off for summer learning that would fit into a lot of the programs that we were working on. And so what we're seeing when it comes to school districts and remediation is the states somewhat relying on the school districts to use the federal funding, because that's what it's provided to us for. It's being provided to us over a 2.5-year grant period in order to recover learning loss, with a large focus of that's going to be on different summer programs. And so it's kind of, so I guess the point is it's kind of a mixture of both. First, the state revenues were looking bleak. Second, we have large sums of federal money that are kind of devoted to this area. So they're expecting districts to kind of work with the huge sums of money, as they put it, that we are getting. But on that note, I don't know if Megan did cover it, but we also wanted to mention that in the Senate proposed budget, one of the items that, well, both the House and the Senate are doing is they are repealing what was formerly known as the reading scholarship, which was a scholarship set aside for students K through 5 or K through 3 who had reading deficiencies. And in its place, the Senate is proposing a pilot program for intensive reading intervention. And they're using at the moment 10 districts as a pilot. I think there's a minimum of 300,000 that would be applied to each district, and Sarasota is one of the pilot counties. This was an issue that we somewhat alluded to last time we were talking about this, but I do see this pilot passing in some form or fashion with an allocation of money directed to it, because it is a priority of the Senate education budget chairman. So wanted to kind of mention that piece as well.
Well, and I want to thank you for making them known that Sarasota County is ready and able to do that. Dr. Asplund?
Yeah, thank you, Ron. You just answered my question. That's what I was going to ask.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions from members about anything else that's moving in Tallahassee? Well, I hope you stay safe up there, and I'm sure they're still keeping their doors pretty much locked to keep the public out. Is that accurate?
The protocols are still the same in the Capitol. The Senate is still closed to the public. The House is allowing people in the door and under certain criteria and under certain number restrictions into committee rooms.
In that Senate Bill 48 now has a companion in the House, the one that pulls all the vouchers together.
It does have a companion, although the companion is not identical. They actually have some substantial changes between the two chamber proposals.
Yeah, and then there's two.
Yeah, and mainly, I would say mainly just to point out the kind of the largest structural changes is the House bill does not embrace the concept of education savings accounts. It does combine many of the scholarship programs, but maintains the corporate tax credits and also maintains it as a voucher-like scholarship rather than a checking or savings account to provide for your education.
But would they start funding that from a general revenue, or are they still keeping up with that corporate tax credit to fund it, or are they finding other ways to fund it?
If the House bill were to pass, it would continue to be a corporate tax credit structure. So to Ron's point, they don't pick up the education savings account issue for the Florida Family Empowerment Scholarship, but they do maintain that for students with disabilities. So the Gardner Scholarship, currently they have the ability to use an education savings account. They would continue to be able to do that, but under the bill, anyone in the Family Empowerment Scholarship would be purely how they are today with the voucher to take them to a private school and also to have the transportation funding.
Thank you. And I understand there's two bills that are aimed directly at school boards. One of them is a term limit, and another one was removing salaries. That they're still moving, I suppose.
Yes, the school board salary, the prohibition on compensation is actually proposed in the House as a joint resolution because school board members are constitutional officers. That does have to go before the voters on the ballot. And so that is only a proposal, though, as of right now, that's moving on the House side. And so we don't see anything moving. It has no companion on the Senate side, essentially, but it is moving through committee. And I wouldn't be surprised if that does pass out of the House chamber.
Thank you. I see no more questions, and we appreciate all the work you're doing for us up there.
You're welcome. Thanks so much.
Thank you all for the time.
Okay, now we come to member comments. It gives us a chance to discuss with each other some things we'd like to hear about. Karen Rose.
Yeah, I just have a question for Dr. Asplund. With the excitement of a strategic plan in aligning our budget, and in today's personnel report for the school board agenda, there's an upgrade of 2 administrators and for approval. And could you just briefly revisit that and summarize why we're focusing on that an upgrade of salary for 2 administrators? Finance.
Upgrade in finance.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so as you know, I know we've had the conversation about Ms. Corcoran. She has a year left, and she's moving folks into certain areas to gain the knowledge that they need as we move forward, especially if we have a new CFO down the road. So I know that we we had a treasurer that was at a C level, which we are deleting, and then we have a director at a C level of finance that we're adding. Okay, and then a general manager budget at a D level and another general manager of accounting at the D level. Those are being deleted. And then we will have a director of budget at the C level. So basically taking the 2 Cs to make them Ds and then removing the treasurer.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
For that. And I have one more, Madam Chair. We've talked about the best practice of having a evaluation in place for the superintendent, and I know that you had committed to bringing that forth at some point. Do we have a timeline on that?
I believe we're supposed to have an evaluation done by the end of June, so we probably need to be starting to talk about that at our workshop next month.
Yes, that sounds great. Linda Termine was able to give me a copy of the evaluation that you have used in the past for the superintendent. So what I'll do is have her send a copy of that to each of you, because I would believe that you would want to look that over and see if you would like to keep the evaluation the same or if you'd like to change that. So we'll send that to you electronically, and then you can give feedback about that.
I think last year we did it with points. In previous years, we did it with just like what we do with the teachers, satisfactory, unsatisfactory, effective, or highly effective. Without some of all that and I'm not sure how detailed we want to get into it this year when we haven't set goals for you. So let's discuss that at our workshop.
Thank you very much. That's my point of setting goals and the best practices and such. So thank you.
Thank you. Bridget?
Yeah, I think just to bring that to fruition, I think that you hit the nail on the head as far as there had been some differing approaches throughout the years, and I think whether it be because of the goals, this was a unique year, but having some time set aside from a workshop a couple months or a month before, because pursuant to his contract, I believe it is required by it's June 30th or June 1st, but so that we can all come together and agree upon however we're going to, whether it be an evaluation through averaging scores or whatever. So we learn from past experiences, we all agree, and then that way we have a smooth ride ahead.
Yeah, one of the problems by doing it in June, we won't have any scores back, so we've often judged the superintendents by how well we scored.
Right. Now, we may need to ask the attorney, then we may need to amend, as we have in the past, because it's in his contract, if I recall correctly. So definitely not something we want to wait until.
Yeah, we do not want to wait for the scores to come back. Right. So we will discuss that, and we'll see when we do the agenda on Thursday if maybe we can do it in our April 1 or the beginning of May. We'll get it done for you. No later than the May workshop, but we'll try to get it in.
Thank you very much.
One. Anyone else? Well, some of us, I'm not sure how many of us went to Wilkinson last week. Was it last week or this week? Last week. For their STEAM Academy, and that they've got it in grades K through 5. And it was exciting. It was fun, although I wasn't able to get my little spaceship home. Well, I didn't understand the directions the first time and barely got to take off. I must have crashed on takeoff, but on the way home, I made it to the last square before I was trying to be fun and stop here and stop there. And yeah, well, the last stop, I turned and went off. But, and I think when we were we had the gloves from NASA, and it was amazing. They have a screen where they get live feeds from NASA at the space station. And the kids that were in there were so excited. And Tom, you were telling me that there was a third grader there that's been coding?
Yeah, Dr. Asplin met him. He's been coding for 2 years. He's in 3rd grade. And then I also heard a great story from a young lady who turned to her principal and said, "That's not a real meteor." And she said, "Why?" She said, "Because I Googled it and it's supposed to be 100% magnetic, and that one is only 50%.
Yep, those kids will get in on the details, and now they have it all open to them. And I'm just so glad that we're opening this world to these young children. And also that, we're putting in schools like Wilkinson so that we can attract more people to come into that school.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's wonderful.
I agree. It was very exciting. The Meteor activity was very hands-on and engaging, and yet then the students were able to go into the classroom and utilize their data and analyze their data and talk through that. It was very good. Did any of you ride the bike that made the ping pong ball rise and the lights come on? Yeah, that was very yeah. It was kind of stressful to get the ball to go all the way to the top. You know, you had to really spin. But the kids, boy, they loved that, and they really did a great job with it. And the also taking off into space and watching parts of the rocket, you know, detach as it went into space. And some of the students were watching that. We were sitting there watching that together, and they're just amazed by that. And it was a really great class.
And then
Wilkinson's doing some really great things.
Each child got a little backpack that with a notebook in it, and
Yes.
some other things that you know. So the kids seemed really excited about it. So which is what we want. We want
Correct.
kids who are excited about doing things in school. And last week it was Wilkinson. Next week it'll be something else. But we've got something great at all of our schools, and let's continue to point them out, as you do on your weekly visits.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Well, with that, we will take our dinner break. We will let them make the changes to the room that are needed, and we will be back here for our meeting at 6 p.m. We are adjourned.